Hey, how's it going, awesome humans? Today's Lightroom tutorial is something near and dear to my heart. I love taking photos, landscape photos, portraits, any kind of photos in fog, and I love looking out the window in the morning and seeing it real nice and foggy. It really makes me want to get out and take a lot of photos, no matter what it is. So this photo is like more of an environmental portrait where I'm off in the distance and you really get to see my surroundings. And I'm gonna bring out the colors in the fog, mess with the contrast a little bit. I'm going to be using a few of the filters like the gradient filter and the radial filter, and finally the brush on my face and a little bit on my clothing to bring it out, because after I make all my adjustments to the photo I end up being a little bit darker, so I bring that out more. And the end result is pretty much something that I do to most of my foggy photos. I try to preserve the fogginess while bringing out the color and the contrast and just adding a little depth to that. For those who want to know, I say it in the tutorial anyway, but I'm using the Tamron 15 to 32.8 and I'm using it at f8 to bring in just so I don't really have to worry too much about me being in focus. And I'm shooting at 15 millimeters, so pretty much everything's in focus until you get way off in the distance. I'm going to be starting this one off with the curve adjustment tool, and then I'm going to go to the camera calibration settings to really bring out some of the colors, and then the HSL. And then finally I'm going to do the basic adjustments. So check this out. So I intentionally underexposed this like I usually do with fog images, and you can see that here. We got some grays and then some lighter grays, no pure white. And that's exactly what I wanted to do here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with this image. I don't know if you can read this, so it says 1/250th of a second at f10, ISO 100 at 15 millimeters with my Tamron 15 to 30 millimeter f2.8 on the Nikon D610 full frame camera. We're going to start in the tone curve area so I can get the basic look that I want for this image. And I'm going to use my little slider tool here. You can click it right here, upper left corner. And I'm going to pull down just to see how dark I can get it, and then pull back up. I'm actually going to probably lighten it very slightly. And I'm going to come up here in this kind of neutral gray area and pull down also. Right about there. You can see we ended up in the midtones, so that's actually in the midtones. And what I'm going to do now is grab that top point. Sometimes it's kind of hard to grab, and just slide that over from right to left. And you can see what I did there. This isn't gonna work for every image, but I knew that it was lighter in here, I guess just because of the sunlight where it's coming in, and there's light behind me, kind of silhouetting me. And if I turn this off, you can't really see that. It kind of almost all looks the same. If anything, it's like a very moderate gradient from a darker gray to a lighter gray. So I'm going to turn that back on and come back down here to my colors, my HSL, and work with this. I'm going to leave the orange alone because my jacket is actually orange. So if anything, I'm going to maybe pull up the luminance a little, maybe a lot. Pull up the luminance, and there's not a lot of color in this image, so I'm going to pop out pretty well here. And there's no green that I can see, so I'm going to mess with the aquas here a little bit. I'm going to zoom back out, mess with the aquas a little bit, see if anything happens, and bump it a little towards the green. And then there's a lot of blue here to work with. You can see that it gets kind of noisy if I bump it up the whole way. So I'm going to pull that down and pull the luminance down. And maybe I'll put it up a little bit more. And for now, that's really all I'm going to do. I'm going to go and bump the clarity because I want to see that road start to pop. You can see that the detail of the road here. And I think actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a selective thing here. Let me pull down the exposure so I can see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to select that road, and actually I'm going to select as much as I can of the lower half of this image. I don't want the upper because there's no point in adding clarity to the fog. I want that to stay as foggy as I can get it. I'm just going to go back behind here a little bit. Maybe I'll just go right across here and then erase out what I don't need. I don't want this line real distinct. Just going to go like that. And then pull it up a little bit until I can see my legs again. I'm going to zoom in here, get my eraser, and get it back out of there. And this isn't going to make too much of a difference. It's just that I know it's there. I know I just painted that in. So I'm going to pull the clarity all the way up here and then back off until it looks a little better than that. What I'm doing here is getting the detail of the road to kind of pop a little bit, and all the little water spots, I want them to pop out as well. So I'm going to mess with the highlights here a little bit and the whites. And you can pull the shadows out of there, but that's not what I'm going for. I might actually pull back down and pull the blacks down a little bit. So what I'm going for here is real clear in the foreground and real foggy in the background. And here's before and after that. Let me zoom back out. It's before and after. And that might be a little bit too much now that I see it zoomed out. So we're just going to leave the blacks alone on this one, because I already did pull it down slightly with the curve adjustments. So right here we actually have no settings going on right now. So I got a lot to work with. Okay, so now I'm going to take, before I adjust anything else, I'm going to take my brush tool again and put the shadows and highlights all the way up just so I can see what I'm doing. Zoom in and kind of just paint over myself here. And you can leave that a little loose here with dark edges, because it kind of gives you, especially clothing, it kind of gives you a cool worn look. So I'm going to zoom back out and see what I can do with that. I'm going to pull those highlights back down, pull up the exposure just a tad, and a little bit of clarity. And I can see there's a problem with my orange jacket. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase that section and do that separately. So now I'm going to just do the jacket here a little bit. Depending on how dark your other clothing is and your face, you may have to do separate pieces like this, but that's okay. I'm just going to start at 0 here and pull only the shadows out. And since that washed out my orange, I'm going to add a little bit of saturation to it till it looks right again. Maybe a little contrast. A little more shadows out. Okay, now that's obviously not as light as I want it. The next step is the radial filter, and I'm going to pull this out, kind of an oval. Put the feather at 100 and invert it. So now we have a very gradual lightened spot, and I'm going to put this back down to 0 just so I can adjust it till I like it. And right now I'm only moving the shadows and the highlights. And you can see how back here it's starting to glow because of that curve adjustment. So basically three steps of lightening this general area here. And it's real gradual. So now I'm going to pull the whites up to like 50. And because the edges are a little dark on the right hand side, instead of separately doing that, I'm just going to make this wider. And then pull this over, center it. I think you're going to make it a little bit taller. Now something cool is really happening here. And I'm going to close this and just give you the before or after here. And you can see before I did this tutorial, I removed the spots of water because it actually is raining here. So I removed the spots of water to save a little bit of time in the video here. But you can see the colors that I'm bringing out here. There's actually colors there, believe it or not. When you look at this, you don't really think there's any colors to work with. But you start with the curve, and you can really pull those out. And that glowing spot, I don't honestly think I could have planned that out. That was an accident. Still, I have not touched any of these sliders here yet. And that's usually how it goes. If I get it looking how I want it, these are just basically sweetening some things. So starting with the tone curve can get you pretty far, and you end up not doing a whole lot after that. And if I pull the contrast down again, pretty much it looks close to where I started. And that I could do to leave that a little bit lighter. And I think I will just pull the contrast down a tad. -27. If I pull more shadows out, get closer to the look I want, see how it's starting to really show some detail in this area here. And I'm still going to pull the blacks down a little bit. Now, we didn't do a whole lot with color because realistically, the only real color that's solid color is on me. So I'm going to just leave that alone, go down to my calibration, and just pull the blue all the way to the left. And you can see we got a nice teal look going here. So I'm going to find a nice balance there. I really want to capitalize on this color. You can see if I pull it out, this just becomes a black and white image. So maybe bump that up a little bit. And you can see what kind of color we're working with here. So now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to adjust this to lighten my face a little bit more. And you can see that kind of looks real terrible. That's because we're at 3.1 instead of 1.1. I just want to zoom way in here, make a new brush, small one, and just pull a little bit more shadows off of my face. And actually, since I'm not seeing what I want here, I'm actually going to touch the exposure slider, even though I normally don't touch this. Sometimes you have to. I'll pull a little bit of saturation out of that because my face is starting to look pink. And that looks about right, about how I want it. Now put it back down to fill. And there it is. There's exactly pretty much how I want myself to look. And you notice all this work going into this. To some of you, it might not seem like a lot. Some of you might think this is just way over what you would do. But once you get out of the preset zone and you actually start adjusting individual images like this, it takes a little longer, but your result is like this. And that to me is a heck of a lot better than just doing your standard adjustments. Definitely not against presets. I have a whole section here of presets that I'm about to release to the general public. But you use that as a starting point, and then you do all these fine-tuning adjustments. And I still may go through and adjust this a little bit more. After I go away and come back and look at it again, I might see something else I want to change. That's what I saw when I took this image. That was kind of what I was going for. I was actually going to lighten the center anyway, but that glow that was happening behind me just made this image even more suited to what I wanted to do. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, every single day, create, share, repeat, and keep it awesome. Please subscribe and tell your friends and smash that like button. And please let me know in the comments what other types of video you would really love to see, and I will more than likely do it. But for now, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time.